Brandon Swanson was 19 years old when he disappeared in the early morning hours of May 14, 2008. His car was stuck in a ditch somewhere in rural southwestern Minnesota. He called his parents for help, and they got in their car and went looking for him. Brandon stayed on the phone with his father as they searched. Then the call ended. His parents tried to reach him again. There was no answer. By the time authorities found Brandon's car, the young man who had been sitting inside it was gone. More than 18 years later, Brandon Swanson has never been found. Brandon lived in Marshall, Minnesota, and was attending Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby. On the night of May 13, 2008, Brandon had been in Canby visiting friends. Later, he started driving toward Marshall, where he lived with his family. It was a trip he had made before. But sometime during the drive, Brandon's car went off the road and became stuck in a ditch. Unable to get the vehicle out, Brandon called his parents. They immediately went looking for him. Brandon told them where he believed he was, and his parents began searching in that area. But they couldn't find him. That was the first major problem. Brandon apparently believed he was near Lind, Minnesota. His parents were searching based on that information. But Brandon wasn't actually where they thought he was. While his parents continued looking, Brandon decided to leave his car and walk. He stayed on the phone with his father while he tried to make his way toward what he believed was the direction of town. His father continued talking to him and trying to figure out exactly where he was. For the family, that phone call would become the last known connection to Brandon. Later, investigators used cell phone information to determine that Brandon had actually been in the area near Taunton, Minnesota. That was far from where his parents had initially been looking. The discovery changed the direction of the investigation. But by then, Brandon was already missing. His parents reported him missing, and authorities began searching the area. Eventually, Brandon's car was located on Lincoln Lyon Road near Taunton. The vehicle was still there. Brandon wasn't. There was no clear explanation for why he had left the car or exactly where he had gone afterward. The surrounding area was rural, with farmland, roads, ditches, fences, and waterways. Search teams began covering the countryside. Law enforcement officers and volunteers searched areas around the location of the car and the surrounding roads and fields. The Yellow Medicine River also became an important part of the search. Investigators considered the possibility that Brandon could have accidentally entered the river or another body of water while walking through the area. At the time, Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Wyzecki said he believed Brandon had probably drowned in the Yellow Medicine River. But that was an assessment, not a confirmed conclusion. Brandon's body was never recovered. And without finding him, investigators could not establish exactly what happened after he left his car. That distinction is important because Brandon's disappearance has generated many theories over the years. Some people believe he accidentally drowned. Others have wondered whether something more happened to him after he left his vehicle. But there is no publicly established evidence proving that Brandon was abducted or murdered. There is also no definitive evidence proving exactly where or how he died. The case remains unresolved. What investigators do know is that Brandon's parents were on the phone with him while searching for him. They were trying to get to him. He was trying to get home. And somehow, despite being in contact with his family, he disappeared. That is one of the most difficult parts of the case to understand. Brandon was not missing for days before anyone realized something was wrong. His parents knew almost immediately that they couldn't find him. They were actively searching while he was still on the phone. Yet the landscape was large enough, and their understanding of his location was inaccurate enough, that they never reached him. Once investigators realized that Brandon had actually been near Taunton, the search expanded around the area where his car had been found. But the searches produced no definitive answer. No body was recovered. No confirmed sighting of Brandon after that night has solved the case. And the cell phone he had been using was never recovered either. As the years passed, Brandon's disappearance began to have an impact beyond the search for one missing young man. His parents became advocates for changes in Minnesota's missing person procedures. At the time, the response to missing adults could be different from the response to missing children. Brandon's family wanted authorities to respond more quickly when an adult disappeared under circumstances that could put that person in danger. Their efforts became connected to legislation known as Brandon's Law. In 2009, Minnesota lawmakers passed the legislation. The law strengthened procedures for reporting and investigating missing adults, including requiring law enforcement to accept missing person reports without delay and conduct a preliminary investigation when someone may be missing and endangered. Governor Tim Pawlenty signed the legislation in May 2009. Brandon's disappearance had helped bring attention to a problem that other families could face too. But even as the law changed, Brandon's own case remained unsolved. Years went by. His family continued to hope for answers. Investigators continued to keep the case open. And the questions remained. Why did Brandon believe he was near Lind when he was actually in the Taunton area? Why did he leave his car? Where exactly did he walk? What happened after he left the road? And what caused the final phone connection with his family to end? There are theories about each of those questions. But theories are not the same as evidence. The official record does not provide a definitive answer. Today, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension continues to list Brandon Victor Swanson as missing. The official record identifies his date of last contact as May 14, 2008. It also records his physical description and states that his vehicle was found near Taunton with no sign of Brandon. His case remains unresolved. Brandon was 19 years old when he disappeared. He would now be 37. More than 18 years have passed since his parents last heard from him. For most people, that amount of time is difficult to imagine. But for a family waiting for a missing person, time does not necessarily bring closure. There was no confirmed final goodbye. There was no confirmed place where Brandon was found. There were no remains to bring home. There was simply a car left behind on a rural Minnesota road and a phone call that ended without an explanation. The truth about Brandon Swanson's disappearance may still be out there. It could be hidden somewhere in the landscape where he was last known to be. It could depend on information that has never been discovered. Or the answer could be connected to an accident that investigators have never been able to confirm. We don't know. And that is the honest answer. What we know is this. On the night of May 13, 2008, Brandon Swanson was driving home. His car became stuck. He called his parents. They came looking for him. Brandon left his vehicle and continued walking while talking with his father. The call ended. His car was found. Brandon was not. Searches followed, but no definitive evidence explained what happened to him. And today, more than 18 years later, Brandon Victor Swanson remains missing. Somewhere between the road where his car stopped and the point where his final connection with his family ended, the trail went cold. And the question his family has carried ever since remains unanswered. What happened to Brandon Swanson?